$6 trillion spending package that goes to Wall Street and goes to the Federal Reserve banks, goes to Boeing. Boeing got $17 billion of it. Delta got $250 million. The Kennedy Center, they got $25 million. So $6 trillion. They went ahead and devalued the American dollar, printed up more money, expanded the money supply. Now the EPA is suspending all environmental laws because what the fuck does that got to do with the coronavirus? But $6 trillion, that means, just look at TARP. What's going to happen? Just look at TARP. They're going to bail out all the too big to fail companies out there. They're going to bail out and institutionalize this whole notion of too big to fail, too big to jail. So we just might as well start saying the Pledge of Allegiance to Merrill Lynch and the Bank of America. The Bank of New York Mellon. The Bank of New York Mellon owns us. That's who we bailed out. We bailed out Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Bank of New York Mellon, State Street, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, AIG, Wells Fargo, PNC Financial. We gave PNC Financial $8 billion. Okay, PNC, here's $8 billion. Get your shit together. They took that $8 billion loan and they bought National City Bank. They bought another bank for $6 billion. So they just bought out another bank. we bailed them out, gave them a big-ass fat fucking loan. And, apparently TARP, people say it's a success. Look, it's a success. Yeah, all these big, these huge, too big to fail institutions didn't fail. The Bank of America is still here today. And the Bank of New York Mellon, old Mellon Bank, Goldman Sachs, State Street. What the fuck is State Street? What the fuck is State Street? What the fuck is a Wells Fargo? What the fuck is a Merrill Lynch? What the fuck is a Goldman Sachs? Citigroup is the only thing. Bank of America, my God, have a nice, simple. JP Morgan, that motherfucker's still alive. And apparently he owns us. So the system of JP Morgan is a system that we live in. We just gave $6 trillion. Bernie Sanders, AOC, they just gave $6 trillion to this financial institutions. We've done this twice. This big, major Wall Street bailout. We've done a major Wall Street bailout 2 times in this millennium. You do it again, and, again, pretty soon it's going to become an institution. So we got, our Pledge of Allegiance. We have to wear Goldman Sachs, right? What country are you from? We're from the country of Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. We're of the nation of JP Morgan and Wells Fargo and Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Oh, yeah, I'm proud to be a member of the nation of the Bank of New York Mellon and PNC Financial and AIG. And then the EPA suspends all environmental laws because, that's what you do. In a pandemic, oh my God, there's disease everywhere, everybody's dying. You know what? Oil and gas companies just fucking rape the shit out of the earth. Yeah, just pollute. Maybe if we have more air pollution, more land pollution, water pollution, it'll pollute the coronavirus and kill the coronavirus that way. Maybe that's the reason why the EPA is suspending. For right now, during the coronavirus, we're going to allow the oil and gas companies to pollute our waters and our land and our air. In this troubling times, we're going to allow fucking industry and corporations to run roughshod over the American people. Fantastic. So Wall Street is being propped up. They're doing, massive domestic surveillance. They're re-upping on the Patriot Act. The EPA suspending all their environmental laws. They're doing a lot of shit right now. They're just, while nobody's paying attention, right? Hurry up and just get this shit. The Supreme Court had the Dennis v. Allen case in 2020 that said sovereign immunity is a thing. Sovereign immunity? Sovereign immunity. Only the people in America are sovereignly immune to sovereign immunity. And so you have what? AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they're the biggest progressives on the scene, and they're all party loyalists. So we don't have any progressives. No more progressive heroes on the national scene. No more progressives. Well, shit. I don't want to champion Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, but who the fuck else is there leading the opposition? Who else stands up for their values and their principles? No, we're not going to bail out this entire goddamn motherfucking financial, Ponzi scheme. No, we're not going to, bail out Wall Street again and make sure that this Ponzi scheme, what capitalism says is that AIG and the Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, if you don't have enough fucking money, you fucking fail. And then, out of your ashes, brand new companies come up. That's how capitalism works. When mom and pop, when the small business closes, when a worker loses their jobs, they got unemployment now, so there is some bailouts. But for small businesses, who bails out a small business? If they go under, they go under. Right? Some sink, some swim. That's the whole thing about capitalism. It's dog eat dog. It's dog-eat-dog capitalism for the masses, but for the too big to fail institutions, it's socialism. Get the fuck out of here. Why do we give, 75% of the $6 trillion is going to go to Wall Street? Hurry up, our first instinct. We've got to make sure the rich people save their riches, make sure they save their wealth, make sure the wealthy keep their mutual funds and their stocks. We don't want them to lose money. Now, do we? Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, those are the only two progressives on the scene, huh? They're the only libertarians, and they're the only principled people, and they're the only opposition. They're the only ones that showed some courage and conviction and some backbone and common sense. So Rand Paul and Thomas Massie are the leading progressives on the national scene. Hey, AOC, hey, Bernie Sanders, where are you at? Where are you at? So we're owned, our government, the Fed, we already know that the system, the three branches, the judges and the politicians, the presidents, the legislative, executive, we already know that the three branches, which the Federal Reserve operates in secret and, in the shadows. But since we already know that our politicians are bought lock, stock, and barrel by Wall Street, since we already know that our politicians are bought and paid for and owned by your Michael Bloombergs and your oligarchs of the world, and your millionaires and your billionaires of the world, since we already know that our democracy, because the whole idea is that Congress is our representative, so therefore they have democratic legitimacy and they speak on our behalf. That's how the thing is supposed to work. But if the obvious system, the politicians and the representative, the Congress, the presidency, the Supreme Court, if the government that we have in place right now is bought and paid for by Wall Street with corporate donations and lobbying and the media and all the money interests that are out there, what are the chances that the Federal Reserve is actually fighting for the working class, is actually fighting for the American people? What are the chances of the Federal Reserve? It's supposed to act independent. It's supposed to be independent of the, government to make sure politics doesn't influence their decision, as if that is ever possible. Hey, guys, let's just not talk about politics. Let's pretend politics isn't a part of this. Let's pretend there are no political power plays and moves. So the fucking Federal Reserve, huh? Thomas Edison, he said if our nation can issue a dollar bond that is interest-bearing, then it can issue a dollar bill, which is interest-free. The element that makes the bond good also makes the bill good. The difference between the bond and the bill is that the bond lets money brokers collect twice the amount on the bond, plus an additional 20%, whereas currency pays nobody but those who contribute directly to society in some useful way. It's absurd to say that our country can issue $30 million in bonds, but not $30 million in currency. Both are promises to pay, but one promise fattens the, money changers and the interest collectors and the usurers, the greedy predator vulture bastards that try to exploit you and steal every single fucking nickel and dime that you got. A dollar bond allows people from behind the scenes to collect money on debt and interest in some fucking crazy scheme. But if they just printed up dollar bills, a currency note, not a Federal Reserve note, but a national currency that says U.S. cash money that is interest-free and debt-free, like those silver certificates JFK was printing up, right, as he got assassinated. Dollar bills that are interest-free help the people. Dollar bonds that bear interest help the banks. And we have bonds. We have Federal Reserve notes. And the Federal Reserve notes in America are the only type of U.S. bank note currently used. So even though a Federal Reserve note is definitely a bank note, it's being used as a currency. Federal Reserve notes are authorized by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. We've been printing up Federal Reserve notes since 1914 for 106 years now. They're issued to the Federal Reserve branch banks, the regional branch banks, at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. So we just gave $500 billion to the Federal Reserve Board in D.C. Now they're going to take that $500 billion and they're going to put it into circulation into the regional Federal Reserve branch banks. Probably have already done it. $500 billion, probably split it up evenly. Everybody gets a piece. And then once the regional Federal Reserve branch bank in Colorado, that would be Kansas City, the Federal Reserve Bank number 10. So the number 10 Federal Reserve Bank in Kansas City, once they get that $500 billion of the, $6 trillion spending bill, they're going to do some fucking accounting, tactics and somehow make $500 billion more bigger than what it is. But it's only when, so the Federal Reserve orders the money from the U.S. Treasury, Treasury delivers it. I think the Fed only pays a nickel per dollar per $100, so they make, $99 for every $100 bill that's printed up. So they got this $100 bill that they paid a nickel for. Then they take that $100 bill and they give it to the Federal Reserve banks across America. And then, when the people are watching, you deposited your real money, then their fake monopoly money that they just printed, they switch it. They put it into circulation without you noticing. And now you got their funny money. And when the regional Federal Reserve Bank puts the brand new money into circulation, that's when it becomes a dollar. That's when it becomes active. That's when it gets turned on. And that's when it becomes a liability of the Federal Reserve Bank and an obligation to the United States. It's a liability to the Federal Reserve Bank because you pay out $100 when you come back and you say, hey, I was supposed to get $100. I didn't get $100. Where's my $100? The American government is supposed to basically fight and die for the value of all their money, for all their paper money. They're going to make sure their paper money is, legit, sound, stable money, no matter what. That's what U.S. dollars are. This fucking dollar means you could pay your debt and it counts in a court of law, so it's legal tender, but it's national currency, so it counts. This money right here that we print counts because the Federal Reserve, they are, whatever, I don't know. So they become liabilities. I think it's important that they make this distinction like this because it's a Federal Reserve note. It's a bank note more so than a currency note. And so instead of saying when the dollar bill is printed, that's when it has value. No, it's not, it doesn't have value when it's printed up in New Hampshire. And was it Dayton by the Crane Company? So a private corporation prints the money per the U.S. Treasury. And then once they print that money up, they sell the money to the Fed, I believe, for a nickel. So to make, 99, once the Fed has it and then passes that money to the banks, they get real money that actually had, 100% of the purchasing power. So they get real $100 bills in exchange for their nickel paid, their $100 that are worth a nickel. They give you the nickel dollars, nickel $100 while they take the $100 bills. And so that's inflation that gives more money to the Federal Reserve. And it's, sides with the Federal Reserve. It's not interest-free. It's not debt-free. There's a lot of fucking machinery. The U.S. dollar is printed, and then there's a lot, this shadowy Federal Reserve fucking machinery that's going on. U.S. Treasury, and then who are the presidents of the regional Federal Reserve banks, and then also there's, the 7-member board. Do they all own stocks? Are they all millionaires like Jerome Powell? Because millionaires and stockholders are going to defend a monetary and financial system and economy which benefits them. Right? So, I want to talk a little bit about, remember when the Fed and the U.S. government just let the Lehman Brothers go bankrupt? The Lehman Brothers just went bankrupt, right? So they saved all those companies, right? They saved AIG by like $80 billion. They gave AIG $80 billion. And then the Lehman Brothers just fucking drowned. So basically, the Lehman Brothers drowned. They watched them, made them be the sacrificial lamb. And then they went ahead and saved Wall Street. So PNC Financial, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, State Street, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank of New York, Mellon, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo. But when it comes to the Lehman Brothers, all those banks get saved. But when it comes to the Lehman Brothers, well, fuck you, Lehman Brothers. Fuck you, you Lehman Brothers sons of bitches, you capitalist predator fucks. You went ahead and you risked too much. You hedged your bets too much, and now you bankrupted yourself. Look at yourself. No, the best way to save Lehman Brothers is to let them crash and burn and die. And then they'll learn their lesson. Don't you ever fuck with us again. But wait, AIG is about to fail? Oh, shit. We better give AIG $80 billion. Boeing got $17 billion. Kennedy Center got $25 million. Million, billion, trillion. Eventually we're going to start actually talking about real money here. If TARP is to be used as a guide of what's going to happen, like what's going to happen now? Okay, they got $6 trillion, but what literally is happening? We don't fucking know. The Treasury Secretary and the federal chair is going to come up with some shit. That's what's going to happen. And then we're all going to go along with it. They're not going to try to get the American people, they're not going to sell the American people on their ideas. They're just going to hurry up and save Wall Street. Go ahead and save AIG and PNC, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley. Make sure all those motherfuckers are saved. When they're the arsonist who, started the fire. They're the arsonist that started the forest prairie fire. They set the houses on fire in your neighborhood. We didn't start the fire, but we're paying for it. They're the arsonists that started the fire, and then we're going to bail them out? No, we should have all let them go the way of Lehman Brothers. They all should have sunk. Dog-eat-dog capitalism. Some sink, some swim. You fucking lost. Give you billions and millions and trillions of dollars when we have 500,000 Americans that are homeless, when we got a large percentage, 15% of our population in poverty, police brutality, we're in endless wars. A lot of shit that's happening right now. Money could help make America better. But immediately, make sure Wall Street's got a social safety net. Make sure Wall Street gets a lifeline. Make sure Wall Street gets universal basic income. Make sure Wall Street has plenty of liquidity. The bank and monopoly always wins. And we have a system that rigs in favor of the banks. So the banks would have won anyways. But we have a system that says, puts a thumb on the scale and gives them the advantage over us regular individual citizens, us peasants, us plebes, us proletariat. A peculiar thing, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley changed their charters from being investment companies to a commercial company. So they were investment companies, but now they're a commercial company. Why did Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley do that in 2008? That's very peculiar, is it not? Maybe that's what the Lehman Brothers, they went bankrupt. So that, clearly whatever the Lehman Brothers did, don't do that. And let's not forget $80 billion with the General Motors and Chrysler. These are some more corporations. It's the auto industry. So we say, but Ford didn't need to bail out from America. Ford didn't take any advantages whatsoever, which I don't know if is smart or stupid. There's $27 billion with TARP that was pushed out there to increase credit availability. $27 billion. I don't remember any credit availability programs reaching out to me. $46 billion for foreclosure prevention programs. So instead of just taking $46 billion and giving it straight to the people that's losing their homes, instead we invested $46 billion on a program called Making Home Affordable. Making Home Affordable. Making Home Affordable. This is stupid. What, I mean, did anybody benefit from Making Home Affordable? $20 billion in TARP funds and Citigroup, $386 million to help 23 community banks. So 23 community banks, you know, got about $400 million. Meanwhile, AIG got $80 billion. Meanwhile, GM and Chrysler got $80 billion. $20 billion goes to Citigroup. $70 billion, $80 billion goes to AIG. And these banks got a couple million over here. They got less than $1 billion. $400 million. They got, you know, 0.4 billion. Anyways, Citigroup here's $20 billion. AIG, here's you 70, 68, 70, $80 billion. So, what the fuck do we do? Now that we're owned by AIG, now that we're owned by Wall Street, now that Wall Street gets, you know, all the free money that they can possibly dream up, what are we to do as Americans? What's our next goal? You know, what's our next moves? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? So I read a couple things here. I think you might enjoy this. It's called the Manifesto of the Communist Party. This is written in 1848, a long, long time ago. I'll just start. Maybe just read for 5 minutes here. A specter is haunting Europe. The specter of communism. All the powers of old Europe have entered into a holy alliance to exercise this specter. The popes and the czars, the Metterniches and the Guzats, the French radicals and the German police spies. Police spies. Not just cops, but they're spies. Metternich, Guzat, French radicals, German police spies, Pope and Czar. Where is the party in opposition that has not been decried as communistic by its opponents in power? Well, shit, it's not Bernie and Joe Biden. They've been calling Democrats in the opposition communist since 1848. Oh, what are you, some sort of fucking communist? What are you, a communist? In 1848, what were the options? I mean, it wasn't like a democracy or like an open market free capitalist system. So what were the options? You're either goddamn communist or a royalist. You suck the king's dick. Either a person who sucks the king's dick, or you're an actual man and a human and a person and said, no, I'm going to stand up and fight for what I got. Where is the party in opposition that has not been decried as communistic by its opponents in power? God, why are people so afraid of communism? Ooh, it's communism. What about $6 trillion for Wall Street? That sounds pretty fucking communistic. That's Wall Street saying, you know what, we need to stick together. We need to stick together, and yes, we need to get, the American government needs to pay for this. Yes, we stick together, and instead of getting gifts, we'll get loans. How about that? We'll give loans, and we'll use interest and usury, and we'll fuck the American people over. Whereas the opposition has not hurled back the branding reproach of communism against the more advanced opposition parties as well as against its reactionary adversaries. Two things result from this fact. Number one, communism is already acknowledged by all European powers to be itself a power. And number two, it is high time that communists should openly, in the face of the whole world, publish their views, their aims, their tendencies, and meet this nursery tale of the specter of communism with the manifesto of the party itself. To this end, communists of various nationalities have assembled in London and sketched the following manifesto to be published in the English, French, German, Italian, Flemish, and Danish languages. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. Freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guildmaster and journeyman, in a word, oppressor and the oppressed, stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open, a fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary reconstitution of society at large or the common ruin of the contending classes. In the earlier epochs of history, we find almost everywhere a complicated arrangement of society into various orders, a manifold gradation of social rank. In ancient Rome, we have patricians, knights, plebeians, slaves. In the Middle Ages, we got feudal lords, vassals, guild masters, journeymen, apprentices, and serfs. In almost all these classes, again, subordinate gradations. The modern bourgeoisie society that has sprouted from the ruins of feudal society has not done away with class antagonisms. It has, but established new classes, new conditions of oppression, new forms of struggle in place of the old ones. Our epoch, the epoch of the bourgeoisie possesses, however, this distinct feature. It has simplified class antagonisms. Society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into two great classes directly facing each other, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. From the serfs of the Middle Ages spring the chartered burghers of the earliest towns. From these burgesses, the first elements of the bourgeoisie were developed. Then you had the discovery of America. The rounding of the Cape opened up fresh ground for the rising bourgeoisie. The East Indian and Chinese market, the colonization of America, trade with the colonies, the increase in the means of exchange and in commodities generally gave to commerce, to navigation, to industry, an impulse never before known, and thereby to the revolutionary element in the tottering feudal society, a rapid development. The feudal system of industry in which industrial production was monopolized by closed guilds now no longer sufficed for the growing wants of the new markets. The manufacturing system took its place. The guild masters were pushed on one side by the manufacturing middle class. The division of labor between the different corporate guilds vanished in the face of division of labor in each single workshop. Meantime, the markets kept ever growing, the demand ever rising. Even manufacture no longer sufficed. Thereupon steam and machinery revolutionized industrial production. The place of manufacture was taken by the giant modern industry, the place of the industrial middle class by industrial millionaires, the leaders of the whole industrial armies, the modern bourgeoisie. Modern industry has established the world market for which the discovery of America paved the way. This market has given an immense development to commerce, to navigation, to communication by land. This development has, in its turn, reacted on the extension of industry. And in proportion as industry, commerce, navigation, railways extended in the same proportion, the bourgeoisie developed, increased its capital, and pushed into the background every class handed down from the Middle Ages. We see, therefore, how the modern bourgeoisie is itself the product of a long course of development, of a series of revolutions in the modes of production and of exchange. Each step in the development of the bourgeoisie was accompanied by a corresponding political advance of that class, an oppressed class under the sway of the feudal nobility, an armed and self-governing association in the medieval commune. Here, independent urban republic as in Italy and Germany, their taxable third estate of the monarchy as in France. Afterwards, in the period of manufacturing proper, serving either the semi-feudal or the absolute monarchy as a counterpoise against the nobility, and in fact, cornerstone of the great monarchies in general, the bourgeoisie has at last, since the establishment of modern industry and the world market, conquered for itself in the modern representative state exclusive political sway. The executive of the modern state is but a committee for managing the common affairs of the whole bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie, historically, has played a most revolutionary part. The bourgeoisie, wherever it got the upper hand, put an end to all the feudal, patriarchal, and idyllic relations. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley feudal ties that bound man to his natural superiors, and has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than naked self-interest, than callous cash payment. It has drowned the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, of Philistine sentimentalism in the icy water of egotistical calculation. 15 seconds, okay. It has resolved personal worth into exchange value, and in place of the numberless and indefeasible chartered freedoms, has set up that single unconscionable freedom, free trade, in one word, for exploitation, veiled by religious and political illusions. It's substituted naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation, bourgeois.